most key contingents of the sports betting industry, which is the leagues. So first up, I'm going to have Eric Rimsky, who's going to join us from the NBA. Second is going to be Brent Lawton, who's from the NFL. So please join me in welcoming both of them. Thank you.
We were debating who was going to get what seat.
Yeah.
You decided for
Yeah, I
us.
stole this.
Not betting on it.
This is my good side, which is, it's more of like not worst side. So last year we heard about how both your leagues' views about sports betting evolved since PASPA. Starting super high level, what are each of your league's visions and goals when thinking about sports betting from here? We'll start with Eric.
Sure, I can start us off. I'm Eric Rimsky. I'm Vice President, U.S. Fantasy and Betting at the NBA. I've been at the league for almost 11 years now. I'll take a couple steps back to prior to PASPA. Our group was formed in 2017. We saw that there was a lot of writing on the wall for what post-PASPA world could look like. So we actually looked at leagues like the NFL, who had done an amazing job of focusing on fan engagement through fantasy and other of like-minded products. And we said, this is sort of an underserved opportunity here at the league. And so me and other members of our team launched a new group that was very much focused on how do we participate in fantasy and betting once PASPA gets repealed and we have more insight into that process. And so from our standpoint, once PASPA fell and the states started to legalize, it was all about collaboration. And when I think about our group and the way that we work at the league, it's very much a service to the fans and putting the game at the focal point of everything that we're doing. And so once the operators started to take bets here in the US, we were very much focused on making sure integrity requirements were in place. That's the number one most paramount thing for us, to make sure we're working in collaboration with the industry to make sure that there wasn't anything that was being done that would introduce any new risk. And then also making sure that our fans had the opportunity to engage with operators who were doing things the right way with the best products they possibly could through integration of our NBA IP and through integration in our events and marketing assets.
Yeah, I'd say actually pretty similar answer. We started taking a look at sports betting around the same time. The timing of the calendar was actually interesting with our season and when PASPA was overturned, but we took 2018 really to stop, think, and formulate our approach. And we had 4 core objectives about how we were going to approach sports betting. The first, as Eric mentioned, is integrity of the game. That's sort of first and foremost for us. That's the priority, and that was, of course, a priority before PASPA was overturned, but even more focus after that. The second was our brand and how we think about brand impact and what it means to engage in sports betting from a brand perspective. And the third was fan engagement. That's really sort of the primary driver of what sports betting ultimately is. It's a way to engage fans and heighten fan engagement. And so on that front, there was a core principle that we had that was important. If we are going to be in a legalized, regulated sports betting world, we want our content to create great fan engagement experiences. But we also want to be cognizant of those that are potentially not interested in sports betting. So when we thought about fan engagement, we thought about it in 2 ways. How can we make the betting experience better, more augmented, but also how do we think about our broader fan base, broader media platforms, and how we're integrating sports betting there. And then the last piece was just trying to be thoughtful about how we went about deploying our IP and doing that in a thoughtful way that met all 3 of those objectives. So that was really our approach, going into the sort of dawn of sports betting in the U.S. and has stayed pretty consistent. That's sort of how we evaluate everything even today.
So I guess over the past year, there's been a lot of changes in the industry from an operator standpoint, from a legislative standpoint. What has surprised you relative to those goals that you kind of set out and relative to the expectations?
I think again, not too much has changed in our sort of way of thinking about it, but I think what continues to surprise me every year is just the size of the market and the growth there. Yeah. Early on, there was a lot of growth, a lot of new states coming on board that sort of made sense, but now that we're a little bit more stable in terms of states that are legalized and there still continues to be a lot of growth, I think it just demonstrates that there's a lot of interest in betting and there's a lot of sort of maturity in the market, and the size of the market is probably even bigger. Every year it seems to be bigger than we think it could be. So every year that's what sort of surprises me.
I think it's interesting what Brent mentions with respect to the pace of legislation, particularly in 2019, 20, and 21. Like, it felt like a new state was opening up every month, and it was crazy. I would open up SBJ and another brand was partnering with a team or whatever it may be, and it felt like things were happening really, really fast. And so over the past year, with that pace slowing down, I think that's been really helpful for a lot of us in the industry. It's given us an opportunity to focus more on some of the fan engagement things that we want to be working on. It's given the operators, I think, an opportunity to slow down their roadmaps, think a little bit more about product innovation, think about ways to get fans retained inside the product a little bit more. It's not just about like, how do we get our app up and running in Kentucky? It's how do we get fans to actually engage with our sports betting markets in a more thoughtful way. And so North Carolina is coming online next week, but that could be the only state in 2024. And I think that just has interesting reverberations around the industry with respect to where we're going to continue to find growth without that natural flow of new customers coming online through new states.
I'm sure that as part of, you both mentioned integrity as being a goal. I'm sure that the offshore versus regulated market is a key component of that. Do you think that as legislation has slowed down, we have effectively taken offshore out of the equation, or is that still something that you have your eye on?
It's hard to say. Like, we're not legislators, so we're not on the front lines of those discussions. I think we've always felt like our responsibility was to our fans, and when we introduced our AGO program, which was our authorized gaming operator program 6 years ago, was to showcase with our marks and our logos who the right operators were for our fans. We say, okay, by showcasing an AGO stamp on an operator's sports betting platform, you know that this is something that you can trust and something that the NBA has endorsed.
Yeah, I'd say same thing. We are obviously advocates of sports betting in a legal, regulated market, and we try and do that, partnering with teams and legislatures and regulators to help grow the legal and regulated market, and then differentiate through content and other rights that we have to make that a better fan experience. Because ultimately, we think it's better for a fan to be in that market.
And Brent, you mentioned partnering with the teams. Are the teams' goals and aspirations totally aligned with the leagues, or are there differences in what they're thinking about as they're trying to navigate the sports betting market?
Yeah, I think at a high level and sort of objectives and goals, it's similar. They obviously operate in a different ecosystem. They have different sets of rights and assets. So the deals that they're doing or how they're partnering with the sports books, they don't have a data relationship. That's sort of more of a league thing. But overall, I think very, very much aligned between leagues and clubs, and how we each go about that is different, just given the different places that we sit.
Anything you'd add from the NBA, the leagues?
League versus team. I think very much so. I agree with everything that Brent said. The only thing that's, I would say, differentiated from our experience at the league versus with the teams is they have the responsibility for filling their building, 41 plus nights per year. And so we've utilized some test and learn opportunities around sports betting to help engage in that area. So I think it was last season we introduced something called betting theme nights, where 3 nights during an NBA season, teams could experiment with more direct odds integrations and things like that within the stadium as a way to engage fans during the games. And those have been successful. Chicago, Brooklyn, a couple other teams have done a really nice job with their partners executing those. And I think it's just been a way to drive new fans and new experiences around the live game itself, and that's been beneficial to our teams.
So a big part of fan engagement is understanding the fan, having data that you can capture as part of that. How do sports betting data rights compare to media rights? And aside from the monetary payments that maybe they provide, what else do they provide to the leagues, meaning the data analytics companies?
Yeah, I think we think about our data rights. So we have 3 different data feeds. We have what we call our GSIS feed, but that's really the play-by-play feed. There's a betting feed, which is that play-by-play feed, but instead of focusing on absolute accuracy and sort of taking a long time to make sure that the data that's being entered is absolutely right, it focuses on speed. And then we have our next-gen stats feed, which is a player tracking feed, chips in each of the shoulder pads of the players. We track everywhere they go, and that translates into data. So we think about all that really as IP and sort of similar to a media right. It's something that we're capturing off of the game, particularly with Next Gen. It's a differentiated technology that we have. Where it's a little bit different is And sometimes that data is going into a consumer-facing experience, a score center,
Yep.
something, whether that's in a sports betting app or not. And sometimes that data is going into sort of more of a B2B function to power a market for a sports book. But I think high level, we think about it as a media right, albeit with two different use cases. And we've had a data distribution partner before sports betting. Currently, we're with Genius. And they do a couple of things for us. One is just around efficiency. So the model in general is a single distributor that can then go and reach all the different sports books and media partners, not just in the US, but globally. So through one relationship, we're able to have our data reach over 97% of the US market. So it's easier, more efficient for us to do that through a single partner. They also add a lot of expertise. So we are not in the business of creating odds, and so having a partner that is helping us manage our data feed, that knows how to do that and can give us the right feedback is really important. Similarly, on the technology front, they are taking our data and distributing it, but they're also developing products off of it, so having somebody focused really on that as a fan engagement piece and a user experience helps power the overall market. And then the last thing is they are also an integrity partner of ours. So in addition to distributing our data, they help us monitor markets, alert us if there's any bets that seem questionable. So there's a lot of, I guess outside of just sort of a simple data distribution relationship, there's a lot of other pieces that they add for us.
Eric, would you add anything on your end from a data standpoint?
You covered it pretty thoroughly.
Great. All right. So I guess another thing that we've heard is Genius has been pushing Bet Vision as a game changer. I guess what are your thoughts on the integration of betting and streaming?
I think it's incredible. It's an absolute game changer. Biased view, but no, I think it's a pretty interesting product. I totally agree with what Eric said. We're sort of at a point in sports betting where things have calmed down a little bit. Everybody's not racing a million miles an hour, and the books are starting to differentiate through product and through media integration. I think it's an interesting time for watch and bet is what we call it, or streaming, to come online. And so we launched this with Genius 2 seasons ago, but in a very limited way. Really, this was the first year. And we were really, a key part of that product is latency, and getting the video to a point where it can integrate with the odds, and it can be compelling and a differentiated experience. That's really how we think about it, is a different place to watch the game if you're focused on a specific use case, which is watching and betting at the same time. And we had really positive feedback both from Genius and from the books. They partnered with FanDuel, Caesars, Fanatics, and Bet Rivers. But I think it's also this year was really sort of the first year in a step. I think to make the whole thing come together, you need low latency video, you need content that people want to go and watch, but then you also need the product integration and the odds to sort of have that betting sort of side by side, and the bets that really can benefit from having a low latency video feed. And I think that's the next evolution of the product, which I don't think is too far away.
What does that mean, not too far away? Is that the next season? Is that a couple seasons out?
I'd say within the near future. How's that?
Good enough.
I would just say we've offered a similar watch and bet product with Sportradar, who is our official data distributor internationally, even prior to PASPA being repealed in the US. We have not done anything like that in the US to date. Obviously, we've been paying attention to the great work that the NFL and Genius have been doing. But for us, as we're thinking about this and we're embarking in sort of new media rights paradigms moving forward, we're thinking a lot about that fan experience and what that watch and bet experience could look like. We even started talking about it as bet and watch and not watch and bet. And what does the US consumer experience look like based on their preset notions of how they consume a game? And I think when we talk to our operator partners, they look at themselves as like a natural second screen experience, something that you are engaged with while you're watching the game. And so we've been thinking a lot about what the media rights landscape might look like in the future, how people are utilizing connected devices in new ways, and how that might impact the bet and watch product. And so it's been a really important strategic project for us to think about what that fan experience looks like in the future.
In terms of product innovation outside of streaming, maybe the other thing that's come up over the past year has been parlay products, which has really, really accelerated. How has that influenced fan engagement?
The same game parlay product, I think, has really been a game changer in the U.S. I know FanDuel was the first ones to offer it, and then a lot of the other operators have been able to feature it as well. For us at the NBA, we're such a player-driven league. The players are at the forefront of a lot of our marketing. The players are so recognizable. They have huge brands, social media followings. I saw Victor Wembanyama just surpass 1 billion video views since he started the season, which is just an insane number. And so the same game parlays are really impactful because it dovetails with sort of the storylines of our games and how the players are playing such a prominent role. And the other thing that I think it's done that's been really, really nice is we have a ton of up-and-coming players. We have LeBron and Steph Curry and sort of your household names, but then we have Anthony Edwards and we have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and other new up-and-coming players that are going to be the focal point of the league moving forward. And products like these can introduce fans who are interested in engaging in betting to them in a way, and then they're following them and their teams more closely moving forward.
Do you think that that's tapped out, or where are we in that process of fully recognizing the opportunity there?
I think that, sort of going back to what we said about product innovation and how that being something that's can be more of a focal point. I mean, I'm not an expert in how to develop these markets by any means, but I think the next same game parlay is coming.
Yeah.
And then the operators will certainly figure that out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think same game parlays, while they are not overly easy to create, I think they are easier than some other markets that are a little more complicated. Again, not being an expert, but the books will ultimately put resources where fans enjoy betting and types of bets that fans want to place. And same game parlays is certainly an area where they've seen that. And so I'd imagine that would encourage them to just reinvest resources and time, effort, energy into other types of bets that the people are going to want to place.
So you talked about bet and watch and bet, or effectively same game parlays, but there's also in-game betting, which has been a big deal in Europe. Hasn't really happened here yet, the way that I think people were hoping. What's held it back?
Yeah, I would say, we've seen growth, although not to the same levels you see in mature markets, but it has been sort of growing over time. To me, I think that's ultimately a sort of maturity of the market, and again, what fans are interested in, what they want to bet on. I think you have to be a pretty sophisticated bettor and be really a good student of the game to think about, okay, what's going to happen next? Do I want to place a wager on that? There's technology elements to it as well. I think from a data standpoint, I think we're there, and the data is there to power it. Low latency video certainly helps, but it's also that is a harder thing to produce and pull together in terms of markets. And so I think it's a little bit of, again, the books are going to invest where they think people want to go and spend their time, and that's a big investment, and it's a little bit unproven. But I think as the market matures, that's something that will sort of come out.
I think also in the mature markets, as Brent mentioned, soccer is obviously the leader in a lot of those markets with respect to sports betting. And when people are
Football and
excuse me, sorry.
markets, but we don't.
And when people are betting in game, I think the majority of those bets are just based on what's the end game going to look like, but they're betting on it throughout the game.
Right.
And for basketball, given the fast-paced motion of the game, that's a little bit more challenging. And so when we think about the growth of in-game betting moving forward, I think we're thinking more about microtransactions and how can you get out ahead of what the next run is going to look like. And so we're working with InVenue, which is a company that came in through our Launchpad program, which is like our accelerator program, to really fine-tune what that looks like. And I think marrying some of their technology with the speed of our game is something that will be a great growth opportunity for us in the future. It's just we haven't gotten there yet.
Is some of that just latency then? Like, you're trying to work around latency issues? And is that on you, or is that on another tech provider?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the latency from a data and video feed perspective is there, at least for the NFL. Yeah. Our model is that we capture we sort of own the technology behind the data feeds. We capture it. We have people in venue that are entering the data, and then some of it is automated with chips on the shoulder pads. So I think that's there. But again, it's a complicated product to build, and it's a big investment. And with a not as mature of a market, I think there's other things that will deliver a more immediate ROI that I think is a little bit more akin to what people in the U.S. are used to doing. Like a same game parlay is a little bit more like fantasy, which people sort of do and know how to do, rather than in-play betting. So I guess to sum up, I think I would say the technology is probably there. It's just a matter of pulling it all together and testing some products that people like.
Right, and then education.
And then education.
Consumer education. Any other new forms of innovation as you think about convergence of media, technology, betting coming together that you're excited about, that you'd flag?
Sure. From the NBA's perspective, we've been working very closely with Sportradar on a new product called MBet, which is a new opportunity for fans to engage with select sports betting operators within the League Pass environment. And so this is a project we've been working on for several months, and we're just starting to unveil some new features over the next several weeks as we head into the run to the postseason. So both FanDuel and DraftKings, who are our co-official sports betting partners, are going to be integrated into that experience. And what will allow for you to do is for the opportunity to engage with those sports books directly adjacent to the League Pass experience. So you have the opportunity to live bet a game, click through directly into the operator site, and then come right back into the League Pass experience. And so for us, it's a new opportunity to sort of take the step forward in terms of that second screen experience where you can be engaging with betting, but also opportunity to view the game simultaneously.
Could you envision personalities interacting as well with the consumer, whether it's, maybe that's more on the media side, Charles Barkley is a prolific.
Yeah, we've done like alternate betting telecasts in the past. Like an NBA bet stream is something that we've experimented with. I think personalization and the opportunity to view different SKUs of the same game is something we're really focused on. When we think about the primary telecast of the NBA, we're very mindful of the amount of betting that's being incorporated into the main primary telecast. You could have people who are living in states where betting is illegal, or it could be families or people who aren't interested in betting. And so what we try to do in those instances is focus on more the storytelling elements of betting. We feature win probabilities, spread, over, under, and we can flash that during the game, like on an ESPN or Turner several times, and say, okay, this is what the expectations were from the beginning, and this is how the game has gone and how that's changed. And we look at that as an opportunity for fans to sort of think about how the game works, but there's like a betting lean to it. As we get into more of alternate opportunities, then you can have a much more personalized experience. So that could be a more personalized sports betting feed. It could be personalities. And we work with Second Spectrum or on the augmented reality side. It could be any number of different things in terms of engaging fans who are interested in different types of experiences.
Yeah, and one other one I'd say too is more integration of media into a sports betting app itself, whether that's video or in-progress highlights or post-game highlights, that sort of content, as people are increasingly spending more time in sports betting apps, and there's an increased sort of just fight over share of time. I think we'll see some more of that, and just the game centers today are relatively basic, but advanced data is something that sort of generally appeals to a sports bettor. So more visualizations, more content in the form of data and analytics is something I think we'll see innovation around as well.
And that visualization would be on the operator side, or would it be through your data partners?
The operators would sort of build that, so the data would flow through them, but then it would be a user experience, either visualizing pressure rates or sack rates, that sort of stuff, or just more robust data in there in general.
You both also referenced integrity as being a key goal. How are you, effectively ensuring integrity is kept?
Yeah, for us, it's mostly around education. I'd say that's sort of the primary focal point. That's educating league, staff personnel, club personnel, players, educating them what our policies are, but then why it's important, why it matters, and then even outside of the policies, just sort of what are things that you need to be aware of if you have inside information as part of your role and your job. What are ways people might be trying to sort of get that out of you that you might not even know about? So again, I think the biggest thing is education, and then a lot of communication with our partners. Genius is sort of monitoring integrity for us, but working with the operators as well. They have a lot of open communication and a lot of communication, particularly if there's issues that are sort of noted.
The collaboration piece is so key. Every single one of the agreements that we have with the operators includes a baseline of integrity requirements just to make sure that we're having open conversations with each of them. And then we've built proprietary data systems within the walls of the NBA that can analyze huge amounts of data. But having that communication and that line of sight with the operators to be able to talk about things as they're happening and making sure that we're mitigating any future concerns is so important. And I think the repeal of PASPA and sports betting sort of coming out of the shadows into the light, that's been a huge advantage in that respect, is that you have that direct collaboration and opportunity to speak to the bookmakers, to speak to the regulators, and really focus on making sure integrity is upheld.
At the same time that the industry has moved from customer acquisition and new states to more retention and engagement, there's also been increasing concerns about responsible gaming. What are the league's views on how you can help the narrative around responsible gaming?
I'll start and then you can jump in. For us, it's very much about driving awareness. We want to make sure our fans know where resources are should they require or need them. And so we have partnerships with the American Gaming Association. We're a platinum member of the NCPG. We have ad restrictions just about in the way that we're able to speak about sports betting or how many commercial spots would exist around a telecast. And then in the beginning of this year, we collaborated actually with the NHL and Major League Baseball on a new 30-second PSA that we call Never Know What's Next, that's very much focused on the unpredictability and nature of sports. And for us, this was a marketing campaign that was visible around live NBA games. We also were featuring it on social. And for us, it was very much about just raising awareness to our fans that if they are betting or if they're struggling with something, that they resources that are available to them. And so we're very happy to be that source of awareness for our fans.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. It's very much a priority for us. It ties back to sort of those four objectives that I was talking about earlier. Brand is really a critical one, and this ties back to our brand. So we work as hard as we can to be leaders in the space, whether that's sort of funding other initiatives or we've also created our own responsible gaming spot that airs in all of our games, and we use our inventory to send that message out. So it's a critical thing for us that we try and be a leader in.
So over the course of the past year, we've also had consolidation within the space. From an operator standpoint, is that a good thing? Is the health of the ecosystem a good thing or a bad thing from your perspective, from the league's perspective?
Yeah, I'd say a healthy ecosystem is certainly important. If we are ultimately trying, working with operators and partners, but if the goal is to create the best user experience and the best fan engagement platform, that requires resources to do that. So having a healthy ecosystem is certainly important. On the consolidation point, I think a lot of the consolidation has come with partners that we were sort of not direct partners with at the league level. That probably has more impact on the teams, to your earlier question.
Yeah.
And there's been some new entrants as well to sort of offset that. So I would say the consolidation, at least from the league standpoint, probably hasn't had too much of an impact yet, just sort of given who's been consolidated and sort of which operators that's happened to. But you could see more of that in the future, which might change the dynamic.
I think the point on new entrants is really important. You had FanDuel and DraftKings really come out of the gates really, really strong in sports betting, and then Caesars and BetMGM and Bet365 and others have continued to establish pretty firm market shares. But now you have Fanatics and you have ESPN Bet. And what's interesting about those is that they're offering sort of a differentiated experience compared to some of the other operators. And so that to me is very healthy for the ecosystem. If you're able to bet through Fanatics Sportsbook and get a little bit of a different value proposition because you're interested in their fan cash or their rewards program, and that's different from what the experience you would have from FanDuel and DraftKings, I think that's positive for fans and therefore additive to the industry at large.
As these larger players almost become platforms in their own right with millions of people who are betting regularly, they've started to form partnerships with other effectively advertising partners. Does that change the relationship or change your thought process between betting rights versus media rights in the future? Because it's almost like betting rights become media rights.
Yeah. I think what it does is it just sort of creates more opportunities for fan engagement. I guess the example I'm thinking of is for Sunday Ticket this year, they offered up a couple different promotions and discounts with third parties. One of those was with FanDuel. So having an official partnership with FanDuel that sort of unlocked an ability for a Sunday Ticket or potential Sunday Ticket subscriber to take advantage of an offer if they were, if they wanted to save some money on Sunday Ticket, and becoming a new depositor at FanDuel was something that was interesting. So I sort of think as they sort of grow more into those areas, it's just sort of a benefit of the overall ecosystem, allows partners to work together and create new experiences for fans, new offers for fans.
Yeah, I think that's what makes these partnerships and our experience working with the operators so strategic, is that it's not necessarily solely about a sports betting product. They have other extensions that did things that have dividends from our business in other ways. So there's been this convergence of betting and media discussion that's happening within, game telecast, but that's also happening on the operator side, with FanDuel TV or DK Nation. And so the betting companies are broadening their spheres of influence to take on media and also other verticals, whether it be through NFTs, or we're working with FanDuel Face Off on their paid games vertical. And so for us, I think the deeper that we can have those partnerships and the more opportunities we can to engage fans across different verticals, the better it is for everybody involved.
And Brent, you spent a bunch of time talking about data and selling data, but also partnering with data analytics companies. I mean, on an official data standpoint, just to be totally clear, you're collecting that data then, you're putting in the technology, or do you outsource some of that? Could you outsource some of that in the future?
We could outsource it, but we do collect all of that ourselves. And some of it goes back to our history. We were capturing data, using it, distributing it for media purposes, to our TV partners, other media partners, but then also selling it to non-media partners. But we sort of had a system that we implemented going back to like the 2000s, and so we had something in place. We felt like that was an important part of the game. Ultimately, the official stats and records, as well as the play-by-play. That was an important piece that we wanted to make sure we sort of had ownership over. And so as we sort of evolved into sports betting, we then modified the system that we had to solve the needs of sports betting. But we do use vendors, for example, for next-gen stats. Zebra is our partner that makes the chips. It's powered by the AWS cloud, so there are other third-party vendors that are involved there. But from an overall, I guess, technology ownership standpoint, we feel like it's an important thing to own. But then, so we're the ones that are sort of building that technology and ultimately entering the data, but working with a partner like Genius and the operators to let us know what they need in that feed to create the fan engagement products that they want is a critical part of the loop.
Is that true for the NBA as well? The same.
It's similar. Yeah, I mean, we're working with Sport Radar. The stats and feeds are originated through the NBA, of course, but then they're distributing that downstream to their customers.
One of the other areas has been social. I mean, it's certainly watching sports is a social experience, but it doesn't seem like there's been that much in terms of social dynamics within the operators. How are you thinking about that opportunity and ways to partner?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I think that's a massive opportunity. As you think about fantasy being sort of like the lifeblood of the industry prior to betting, that's what made fantasy so exciting and so interesting. I have a fantasy baseball draft this weekend with my friends from college. That's how we keep in touch. That's what makes it fun and social. And so I don't think that's really been figured out yet necessarily in betting. I know there are some companies that have experimented, and I like, FanDuel has like their sort of like their squad bet, so you can have strength in numbers in terms of what people are betting on. But I think that social element of sports betting is something that's missing. And I think as we think about innovation and forward thinking, like that's something that's really ripe for opportunity.
Yeah, you've seen it in some other platforms like Sleeper and others that are more fantasy, not really sports betting based, but it does seem like an area of opportunity. And when we look at interactivity and other things that are going on around live games and other settings, chat and social is a big, that's sort of the number one thing that people want to partake in while they're watching games. So it certainly seems like a logical extension for a sports betting app.
So as we wrap up here, over the past year has been really a theme around consolidation, profitability of some of the operators. In a lightning round, what is the one thing that you think is going to be like the theme of 2024 for the industry and for you all?
I think it's just going to be that continued media betting convergence, whether that's happening through a telecaster's platform or an operator's platform. Like the connectivity between an operator and the viewing experience, I think it's just something that's going to continue to move in a really rapid pace.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, especially as the sportsbooks sort of start turning to profitability and have sort of more time, resources to invest in their products. I think that's what we'll start to see. I think that will start to drive some unique and different products and people trying to differentiate. And I think it will probably start to drive some different offers, more of a marketing standpoint, but different offers from the books rather than sort of the more traditional bonuses that we've seen.
Manning Bet Vision in the future.
There you go.
All right, that's it for us. Thanks so much, Eric, Brent, for all the insight as always.
Thank you.
Yep.